Hello, this is Mike at GameFromScratch, and welcome back to our ongoing Godot tutorial series. Today we are going to be covering keyframe animation. This is actually building on our last tutorial covering sprite animation, which we actually did programmatically. As with all of the tutorials in this series, I'm assuming you've read the previous or watched the previous ones up to this point. In this case, though, it's mandatory. I'm actually going to build on the last tutorial we worked on. What you see in front of you right now is the end result of the previous tutorial. It's an animatable sprite with a number of frames set up for animation, and then using code, this code specifically, we animated that character. This code worked by every 20th of a second we move on to the next frame of animation until we hit the last frame, then we go back to the first and do it all over again. The end result was this nice little walk animation, which works quite perfectly. So if you wanted to, you could work completely in code. However, there is a very, very comprehensive animation system built into Godot, and once you start getting into more complex animations, it will definitely be invaluable. Also, as you will see, you can do a lot more than just moving position or animating a sprite. So let's take a look at that. First thing we're going to do is we're going to get rid of this existing code. So instead of all that, we'll just do a pass. So now our code should, in theory, do nada. Which is exactly what we want. Next up, we're going to want to add another node to our scene. This key and critical node, so let's go to our root, and we add an AnimationPlayer. Right there. Add one of these to our world, and that is good. So we now have an AnimationPlayer. Now all we need is an animation. You'll notice with this selected, we have a new toolbar down here. This is your timeline. So this can control going across the range of your animation, so 8 seconds at this point, or 0 seconds at this point. Now what we need is an animation, and that can be created by pressing this new button here. This will create a new animation for the animation player. We will call it walk cycle, like so, and now we're going to click this pencil icon over here to bring up the animation editor. It's a little window right on top, and like I said, we're going to be working with keyframes. Unfortunately, I do not know the etymology of the word keyframe, but it's one of those things that's existed as long as computer-related animation has. And I actually think it goes back to drawn animation, where they actually used to do keyframes of animation. So basically, they would do specific scenes, and then someone else would come along and interpolate the results in between. In computers, it's a much more profound result. So what you do is you set keyframes of animation within your timeline. So what you're saying, for example, is at the 0th frame, I want this guy to be here. At the 10th frame, I want him to be here. And at the 20th frame, I want it to be here. And then what the computer does is interpolates the results in between. So it does a smooth transition between those two states. And that is essentially how you do animation. So instead of having to animate every single frame, like if you've ever done like a drawing at the corner of a book, and then you flip through your animation, your flipbook style animation, you had to draw every single frame yourself. It's monotonous, it's time consuming, it's irritating. In this case, you just do your quote-unquote keyframes, and the computer does the rest of the work for you. Now, it doesn't have to be animation. It can be just about anything. If you've done programming work in the past, and you've done something called a tween, tween is keyframed animation. It's just a programmatic version of it. Tween refers to the in-between, or as you could say, in-between keyframes. So a tween is the thing that's doing that calculation between 2 points. Well, in this case, in animation's case, the software is doing it all for you. If that was all Greek to you, do not worry. It will all make sense in a second when we demonstrate it. If you happen to be Greek, the expression all Greek to you probably means absolutely nothing, so definitely ignore it in that case. So let's look at our first keyframe animation. First thing all we're going to do is we're going to take this node right here, and we're going to move it to, say, I don't know, here. That's it. That's all we want to accomplish. So first things first, you'll notice up here at the very, very top, you have a new menu here. So when you've got your editor up, this will set up a different menu for you. And you see this handy little key thing? That's critically important. You got these 3 icons here: location, rotation, and scale. Now a keyframe for position can have up to all 3 of those items keyframed. So basically it's saying store the information for this translation in this keyframe. So we can store location, we can store rotation, and we can store scaling as well. In this case, we only want location, so it's the only one. These are all toggle buttons. So if we wanted rotation as well, we can click it, scale, and click it, but we only want to track location. So we want to start at the very beginning. So we almost always want to have at 0 a keyframe set. So we'll go ahead and we'll set the keyframe. You just hit this key and you'll get this little pop-up here saying create new track for property transform / position and insert key. And yes, that's exactly what we want to do. So now if you look down here, we have our track of animation for the transform / POS value, and we have this little blue dot, which is actually a keyframe. Now you can have multiple tracks or multiple concurrent animations within a single animation, which is very cool and something we're going to use in a second. So now we want to look at how do we set our next key. Well, this is going to be a very simple animation sequence because we're just going from point A to point B and letting the computer figure out everything in between. So now let's just move to point B. We'll call point B, say, there. And now what we need to do, oops, I did this wrong, my bad. The timeline's very important. So the minute I press this, it's going to go back because that's the only keyframe we got. So what we want to do is set it to the end of our animation and then end it there. So we're going to make this walk cycle take, say, 2 seconds. So we set our length in seconds to 2. You'll notice your timeline here now goes to 2. It's 100% calculation, and you can see your scale here. Your upper axis is 0 to 2. Now this is controlled using this zoom container. So if you want to have more detail or less detail, you easily can. So let's zoom it a bit so we have this nice in-depth overkilled view of them. So now what we want to do is move to our very last position in our timeline, and we want to create a new key. So now that we're in our last position, let me update this position over here, and yeah, that'll work. So that position right there, and now what we do is set another key. So you'll see we now have a blue dot for each key in the sequence. Now you could go in here, let me just show you really quickly. I could do another key and see there, the animation is actually already showing you the interpolation it's going to do. So we only have the 2 keys set, but the computer is figuring out the in-betweens for us. And that's the power of keyframe animation. Very quite cool. So we can hit play and preview our animation, like so. And head back. So one thing to show you quickly, I'll go somewhere in the middle and I will insert another keyframe. Like here, and boom, you'll notice you now have this other keyframe. Now this is a little problematic UI wise, but you can left click this keyframe right here. Okay, I gotta turn that guy off. You can left click to select it, and then you can drag it and move it somewhere else. Or you can also turn this guy right on, this guy right here on, and then you can click it and you can edit the value yourself. You can also edit the easing. We won't cover that today, but that's basically how transitions work in and out of this particular keyframe. We're going to stick with linear for today, which basically is going to be a straight line or a very, the progress between the 2 keyframes is 100% linear, so they move at the same speed, etc. But you can change that with this easing value right here. But the key thing is you can change this, so we're keyframing the X and Y position. I could hand set it to a different value right here if I wished. So to directly edit keyframes, you can do that using this guy right here. But with that guy turned off, you'll see this keyframe, I can move it around and it's selected in white as opposed to blue. When that is the case, you can hit delete and get rid of it. So if you want to manipulate keyframes, that's how you go about doing so. But that is our simple animation. Now we've got one of 2 ways to play this. We have this animation now, we created it in our animation player and it's called walk cycle. Now when we start our application up, we're going to want to go ahead and run this animation. The easiest way is this guy. Now, realistically, you're not going to use it very often because all this says is when the scene loads up, or when this animation player technically loads up, play this animation. So now if I hit play, there we go. We got our animation automatically occurring. Very cool. However, or if we want to loop it, we can turn looping on and play the same thing. And back to 0, and around it goes. So we can very easily have this animation start as soon as we start our application, but truth is you're not going to do it that way very often. You're generally going to do it programmatically. Programmatically is also equally easy. We'll do it right in our animation player, and we'll add a script for that. AnimationPlayer.gd, and we'll create that guy, and in our ready call, we will just call play, and then you pass the name of your animation. So, same end result, but chances are you're probably going to start your animations using code as opposed to playing them automatically when you start. Unless, of course, you have something like an animated title screen that literally you want to play it as soon as you start your app. But as you can see, doing it in code is very, very simple, very, very easy. You just provide the name of the animation you used, and you call the play function of the animation player. Of course, you could call this by git node animationplayer.play somewhere in your root node or wherever you want to call the animation from as well. So that's the two ways you can go about starting this guy. So you can set it as an automatic, or you can do it in code. So let's head on back to our animation. Let's go back to 2D view, like so. Next thing we want to do is actually walk. This isn't a very convincing animation so far. It's not convincing at all, actually. Now, the neat thing, and here's where the power of Godot's animation system really starts to shine, and I'll show you something very, very, very cool right now. So we've got our single track here updating the position. Now what we want to do is actually update the walking frame as we go. So we have 24 frames of animation that we're going through. We want to update that too. Now, if we go back here, we select our sprite. With our animation up and going, you'll notice all of a sudden we've got this key icon beside all of these properties. Just about every property has a key beside it. That is because they can all be keyframed, and that is a powerful tool. Let me just show you. Again, we got a very simple animation. So we're at the very, very beginning. We want to go ahead and we'll set our initial frame to 0. Press enter, and then we just hit this key. And we'll get this little pop-up saying, create a new track for property frame, and insert a key, and you say yes. Now we'll go to our very last frame, like so. Hey, why did you loop back? Very last frame, so we're at 2. And then we just want to go to our last frame, which is 23 or 24. And we'll set a key there. So we got our second set of keys, like so. And let's see what happens. Nothing. Okay. This is because I haven't set something. So select our frame transform, and you want to come in and drop this guy down. This is how your interpolation between points is going to happen, and we want it to be continuous. To say it's kind of the equivalent of saying linear before. I don't know why that one's not set by default. Normally, you're always going to want that setting, but that's what you want to do. So now that we've got that, let's go ahead and press play, and there you go. You've just created your first keyframed animation. Same end result, but as you can see, it's pretty powerful. You can animate anything you want. So if we wanted to go ahead and set one more in here, let's go to, we'll actually show you, let me show you two things. Another thing you can do, we're using very simple settings. We're setting one key and one key. You can also create keys in the middle here. So let's go to, say, this timeline. If we wanted to slow the walk down initially, so we didn't want to have as many steps, at this point, instead of interpolating it from 0 to 24, we could say 0 to, say, 3, and then 3 to 24. So let's insert a new key here, but we'll set this one slower. So set this key, like so. You see the new key was created. So you can have multiple keys in your animation. And now let's see the result of that. So there you go. Initially slow and then fast coming out. So you don't need to have this linear progress. You can have as many keys as you want to do your transforms. You could also have your you can set waypoints. So I could keep setting keys for position and move it all around the map, etc. So truth of the matter is, I do want this linear as opposed to like that. So I will just go ahead and delete that guy out. But as I said, anything with the key beside it can be over time animated. So let's add one more. So we're at frame 0 now. And let's go find opacity. There. The opacity starts at 1, and let's keep that. Yep, we'll create a new one for that. And then about that far in, we shall instead have 70, let's go 50% opacity. There, press enter, set your next key. And then we'll go to the very end, and we'll set our opacity to 0. Like so. And now, not only are you animating and walking, you're also fading to black. Very, very powerful. You can animate the hell out of anything you want. It's a very cool system, and it's that easy to use. At the same time, now that I stop this guy, our opacity animation can also just select it, select the track you want, and click X, and it's gone. But that's it. That's all that's involved in animation. Very, very cool. There's a lot more here. There's stuff we're not seeing yet. Like, let me just drop down this tracks menu here. You can do duplications. You can set the transitions between them. Again, this is the same thing we were looking at for the, if I came in here in the edit mode, that guy, and click, that's the same as the easing. So turn that off. But what it's really cool, a little confusing to use, but let's add one more track here, and it's a call function track. And sometimes in your animation, you're going to want to call back to code. And that's exactly what we've just done. We just created a new sequence. There's no keys in it at all. But this is when this key is hit, it's going to go ahead and call the function. And it's going to call the function in your root class, of which I don't actually have one. So let's go ahead and create a script for our scene itself, like so. And let's create a new function called halfway. Like so. We want to go ahead and call this function now when we get halfway through. So now the first thing we got to do, with that selected, make sure that's our track. Just click this little plus icon here and it'll add a keyframe. See right there at the very beginning. So let's move that guy, I don't know, halfway. How long is 2 seconds? So 1 second in. So right there. Now we want to go to edit mode. We'll edit it, and then under value, we give the name of the function we want to call. No brackets, like so. So halfway there, we are going to call the function halfway. And that should do it. I've had some issues with this guy in the past, but now let's go ahead and play. There's our animation. Halfway got called. Halfway got called. Halfway got called. Very powerful way that you can actually put, you can basically program whatever you want in your animation system. So you can put code in there that gets called just like any other keyframe. So instead of changing a value over time, you're going to be calling each time you hit a keyframe for a call func track, it's going to go ahead and call that particular function. The one other thing to show you there, let's go ahead and say add some parameters here. So str and then space and a b. You can also, I'm guessing you can guess at this point, pass in parameters. So we'll give the first one as a float of value 42, and the second one is a string called, let's say, there. All right, so here's the same thing, but now it's being passed parameters, and I put one missing bracket. All right, let's try that again. See? Oh, I shouldn't have the quotes. A double set of quotes. Let's edit that out. Space. There. So as you see, you can easily pass parameters in with these animations. Now, another thing that you're thinking, oh, well, you can do a lot of programming here. What if I want to do something at the end of our animation? Well, you could easily set a keyframe with a call func at the end of your animation, but you're not going to want to do that. That's kind of overkill, because what you can do with your animation set, let's go back to our scene, grab our animation player, you can go to its events, click the event, and you can have on animation finished, or when the animation changes. Actually, those are pretty much the only two you're going to use. And those basically you could have it, so you can fire off an event on your animation player when the animation player changes the animation it's currently playing, or you can have it set that when the current animation plays finished, so you could queue them up this way using events. Of course, you could do it with call function. There's nothing preventing you, but that's definitely another option. So that's essentially it. Right now, we've just created this one. You can have multiple, obviously. Just keep pressing here and keep adding more. You can duplicate your existing one. So now we have two called walk cycle. Now let me show you something very, very cool before we move on. Let me go back to, I guess before we finish, technically. I'm going to go in here, and I'm going to grab our root node, and I'm going to add a button to this scene. And we'll call that guy that. All right. So let's add the text to our button. Let's go with change me Change me. All right, so that one's set. Let's put a script on this guy. Call it change me button. I really come up with a naming convention because I am horrible about naming Godot scripts. All right, so here we got now a button that we're going to do something really kind of special with. Let's go on back. Let's select our button. Let's wire up an event for this sucker. Here, button, event, pressed, connect to our button, connect. All right, so we now have our on button pressed event. Let's get rid of all this junk. And what we want to do is get our parent, get our node, animation, animation, come on. There we go. So we want to get our animation player. There, let's grab a reference to that. So when they press the button, we're going to go ahead and grab our animation player, and now we're going to play around with it a bit. We're going to change the key value. We're actually going to programmatically grab this frame here. No, this one, the position value, and we're going to grab the second key, and we're going to change where it's pointing. So you can see you can programmatically alter these key values and change your animation as a result. So right here, first thing we do, obviously, is our animation. So animation dot get, let's see, first we want to do is, track, animation dot get, animation. We got to tell it which one first. Walk cycle. Actually, you know what? That's the one I'm going to grab reference to. So we actually don't need the animation player. We just need the animation. Like so. So now animation, and you've got your tracks. So you can get the number of tracks you've got. And then once you've got that, you can use it's all index based. So we're going to use these track functions. We're going to track get key value. And we're going to use, so we want animation track 0 base. So this would be 0, this would be 1. So we want to get 0. There are functions to get the index of something by its name. So we could search for it by this name or whatever, but we're just going to cheat a bit. So we want, all right, animation, come on. Am I running? I don't know, my editor's being stupid on me. All right, 0. And then we want to get the index of the keyframe we want. So this is 0, this is 1. We want to change this one. So 1. All right, come on, 1. All right, so that will return the value of the key there. So that's actually not even what I want, but let me show you now that we're there. So we'll just print that out. So right now, let's go ahead and play this. And print, you'll see the value is 318 and 647. It's always that, because that is the end target. That is the position right here of that keyframe. So that is how you get that. But what we actually wanted to do was, here, I'll leave that in there for now. So animation.track set key value. So that's kind of what I did wrong. So it's track 0, keyframe 1, and now we send in the new value. Our value there is a vector 2, so we're going to pass in a vector 2, and we will now instead send it to 400 and 400 for absolutely no reason. So let's just go ahead and delete that. Stop. Press play. And I have an error. Probably missing a parenthesis. I am. And done. All right, so there's our normal animation running, and anytime I want, I can go ahead and press change me, and that keyframe is now different. So programmatically, you can do just about anything you want with this system. At the very beginning, we have you can call functions basically at where keyframes are. You can have it call back on you when it, or you can use the events for when it changes or when it hits the end. Or as you see right here, you can actually programmatically grab the animations and muck with the tracks or the key values themselves and update them as you go. So you can do a ton here, pretty much anything you want. But you can have these nice editing tools. You can override them as you just saw. So that's about it. That's all I'm going to cover today. So I'm going to do a quick recap now of everything we just looked at. we came in, we took our existing animation for, instead of being code-based, and we instead added this animation player. This animation player class then, when it's selected, brought up this guy down here. We added a new animation called walk cycle using this button right here, and then hit the editing tools to bring up this guy. Now it's a matter of it adds these new options. So you select the node that you want to animate, or the, so the node that you want to animate here, and you can do location, rotation, and scaling sets right here. So just wherever you want to change, you set a key here. Your timeline is down here, so where you want to change it to, you go to that location, and you can set another key there. Very common to set a key at the very beginning and very end of your timeline. You're going to do that a lot. So that is how you can edit various keyframes. You can have as many as you want in between. You can change the way the interpolation happens between them. You can change the length of your animation right here. Or the stepping amount between between the frames. The one thing you're going to probably run into is this guy right here needs to be set to continuous, unless of course you have it where each keyframe is kind of a standalone thing. So if you're going to like jump without any transitions between them, in which case you would use discrete instead. But generally what you're going to want is continuous, because that's where the magic happens. That's what causes the in-betweening between the two keyframes to happen. So you can, once you've got your keyframe set, you can toggle this button on to make it so that you can select and edit the value in line. So that's just select. I could drag it and move it around now, or I click this and now I can click it and edit the values. And then finally we looked at in your multiple tracks, you can come in here and you can actually add a function called track. You add the function in, you create a keyframe by adding this, hitting this plus, adds a new keyframe in the timeline somewhere, like that guy just did. Turn that editor off, so now I can position it, and then you can edit that guy, put in the name of the function you wish to call, pass in any parameters you wish, and you are off to the races. Or I can turn that guy back to select mode and delete it. And that's about it for there. On top of that, then you've got in your animation player, you have these events available to you for animation changed and finished, also renamed, I don't know what that would ever call, or entering exit the tree to close out of there. Or you can directly encode, like what we just saw right here. You can get the animation player. It's just a node, looks like any other. Get the animation by passing in its name, and then you can sit there and you can muck with the track values or the keyframes in those tracks as much as you wish. And essentially that is animation in Godot. As you can see by these pluses, or sorry, these keys available within properties, just about everything with a value that changes can be keyframed. So the sky is the limit on what you can actually keyframe within Godot. And as you can see from the programmatic things being exposed, there is a lot you can also do dynamically. You can reorder, didn't really cover on this before, but you can reorder the position here by using these plus and minus arrows, or you can get rid of them by clicking the X here. That's it. I hope you enjoyed that. That was keyframe animation in Godot, and as you saw, it's an alternative to the programmatic approach we took with our sprite animation. Very powerful, very, very, very feature heavy. Hope you enjoyed that. Thank you very much. Bye.